Welcome to the house. We're here at MasterCard in New York. I just met an amazing adventurer, a fellow journeyman, and here we are at the mobile headquarters. All right.
Well, Dan, this is rather unusual. I can't believe we're sitting in a Honda Prius.
Well, I couldn't believe if Honda made it is. That's a Toyota.
Toyota Prius.
Japanese even.
Japanese.
Huh?
We're sitting in a Japanese car, no seats, and gravel on the ground. I think MasterCard must be wondering, what are these two crazies?
Yeah, they must think.
Tell me, what is it about the car? You've driven cross country from San Francisco to Purchase, New York, where we both are speaking to MasterCard. I thought I was crazy sailing to Bermuda and jumping on a plane to fly over here. But finally, I meet someone who's a little crazier than I am.
Oh, that's a compliment.
Who drives, what, 3,000 miles?
It was 3,000, yeah.
3,000 miles, sitting on a beach chair, because the car has no wheels. Why? Tell me why.
Well, when I was in Iraq, and most explanations start really well with that, we went around doing missions and we didn't have a place to live. In the mind of the veteran, in the soul of the combat veteran who served their country and doesn't even know their country, I wanted to do two things. I wanted to travel America, and I wanted to do it in a way that was most accessible. Being on stage all the time, you know, sometimes we want our privacy, but other times we recognize that we are a part of this dynamic world. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm no longer depressed. I no longer afraid to go outside. I have to go outside. Sometimes a police officer is knocking on my window. But I believe that this is one solution for our returning veterans. You know, all around the country there are people who feel isolated or alone.
They served our country and now it's being discarded to the side.
And this is whose responsibility is that? I'm an officer.
This is where we have a challenge with society. It is society's responsibility. We've engaged in certain practices and we need to take care of our people.
That's right. As you can tell, it's sweltering in here, mostly because this topic is so hot.
Exactly. But tell me, what percentage of our returning vets are ending up homeless?
It's a growing number and it's very hard to tell. Many of them don't want to have anything to do with the government at all, but the biggest cities where you're going to see them, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, and San Francisco. I went to City College of San Francisco and we had 100,000 students. It was the largest veteran population in California state particularly. I feel that students, veterans, all sorts of people who are just starting out in life again should have everything at their disposal. So this was kind of a way for me to reach them. I went to San Francisco, I met a lot of veterans and they liked this idea. They said they want to be mobile.
We've got a number of challenges. Firstly, we need to have an adventure.
That's right.
So let's begin with trying to live an adventurous life. But also we need shelter. And so many veterans are ending up homeless. And then also in the United States, there is no decent public transport system.
That's right.
So again, here you are solving the adventure component, the transportation component, the accommodations component.
Food is very cheap. You know, there's a grocery store anywhere in America. On the 40, which goes through Oklahoma and Texas, I stopped at Starbucks, but in Oklahoma there's only 2 Starbucks. So I had to meet people, go out of my comfort zone. I couldn't use my loyalty card anymore, all those conveniences that we get addicted to. And it just became meet the country, meet the people that you served. It took a lot for me just to be able to get the veteran plates that are on the outside of it. My brother went in the military, he's still not able to tell a lot of people that he served. And a lot of us go into hiding.
So why do you feel the vets are in hiding or don't want to talk about our government? What's the underlining of that?
When I joined the military, I didn't have much of an identity per se. You know, I wanted so badly to be accepted. I was a double minority. I didn't go in to be an activist, but there was this displacement, and I felt that through service I could regain something of who I am. Well, that changes. We say in the military, there's a reason why you join, and there's a reason why you stay.
And it becomes the reason why you leave.
That's right. It should be. If the values of courage, which they endow at very beginning, if that's true, if that training is true, then it is also your duty to go and live your life as an American. And they need to see, I think Americans need to see their soldiers coming home and healing and being a productive part of a participatory society.
This probably was the first war, the Afghanistan and the Iraq war, where the public did not directly participate. There were no sacrifices made from everyday Americans. All the sacrifices were made from our armed services. Our men and women in uniform were sent, and depending on your political persuasion, whether you agree or disagree with the war, that's immaterial. But people have served, and so do you feel the veterans are embarrassed for the conflict, or do you feel the war has been so tough on what you've had to endure out there that it's hard to feel human again? Help us.
It's both. And I want to say this one particular about this and every war. So first, generally, it's always been the minorities and the economically disadvantaged who go to the front lines of war. We're not talking about the officers or the West Point grads. I myself graduated from West Point. We're talking about today, the black and Latino, the homeless, the ones that we say, okay, well, can't you just, what do you think they're recruiting? Can't you just...
The Walmart parking lots in the old days and now the arcades
And this country, unlike, well, let me say, not unlike a lot of countries, was formed on the basis of free labor. Slavery was written into our constitution. Not like South Africa, right, where they got to rewrite a constitution recently, but most countries, they expect people to do the jobs that they don't themselves want to if they can afford to get out of them. So as a gay American, I see, especially within the transgender community, LGBT community, we just are now getting our right to serve openly. We've always been there. Right? And so it's
don't ask, don't tell, having gone.
And I'll be talking about that in an hour. However, my comments here are very separate from MasterCard, and I didn't agree with the war. I studied Arabic. I was willing to go to the war. I was at West Point, was just an hour south of here. Or sorry, it's about across the river. An hour north of the city. And we knew that we were also targeted after 9/11. I studied Arabic for about a semester by then. I knew it was important, so I majored in it. I continued. I wanted to serve.
Explain to me. I'm confused.
Yeah.
You wanted to serve, but you opposed the war. That is a direct conflict,
isn't it? And it is the moral responsibility of the soldier. And there are provisions within. When you get an illegal order, murder that innocent. Okay. Well, I'm first going to ask you for clarification, then to retract, and then I will disobey. Those three steps are required for officers. We learned that at West Point. And why we get a college degree is so that we are open to meeting all these other people and learning new things. We didn't know that there were no weapons of mass destruction in 2003. As soldiers,
you're led to believe.
That's right.
And there's a big difference between led to believe and the actual facts.
That's right. And when we were in war, as you know, use ad bellum and use in bello, they're equally important, I think. Your conduct in war and your conduct towards war, i.e. the politics. We were never involved in the politics as soldiers. Even if we voted, we as soldiers said to ourselves and to the world, we're not like those countries where the politics and the loyalties to the government or the coup d'etat or the junta, we are separate, and we don't see ourselves as a political lobby. But what about when people lie to you? And you are stuck, and your friends are dying, and I was in Iraq when Saddam Hussein was getting executed. There was a very dangerous time, 2006 and 2007. The surge was happening. We were just realizing not only the full consequences and costs of war. Remember, the Iraqi civilian totals, they never publicized.
Yep, it's huge.
And now...
we lost about 3,500 soldiers, and estimates are well over 100,000 Iraqis.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be about death, but when we think about the consequence of going to war, it should remind us.
Well,
it should be a hard decision.
We should actually be looking at conflict from a different perspective. It should be the last resort, not the first resort. And when all diplomacy, when all democracy, when all communications are totally exhausted, at a final result, when there is nothing left, because everything else was exhausted, then we should be putting people like you in harm's way to defend an idea, but not as the first resort, not based on mistruths, half-truths, political gain or economic gain.
Economic gain was one thing that I was personally attached to, or caught up in. I was a pay agent, so every week I would have $1 million of cash from the red zone to the green zone. I'd take a helicopter, and we would have to count the serial numbers in case there was a vehicle IED, a car bomb, with the $100 bills in them. They were all sequential. And they would go back to the pay agent, and racked I was so racked with guilt and with questions, doubts about what we were actually accomplishing there. It was so hard that when I came back, I couldn't spend any money. I saved 50,000 US dollars. I didn't spend anything while I was there. I don't have wife and kids. And I couldn't even buy a jacket. I couldn't even go to the register because I thought, what are you going to do with this money? Are you going to threaten X, Y, or Z?
Mm-hmm. So basically you became a voter by a choice of removing yourself from consumption.
Well, I actually wanted to stay in the military because like many whistleblowers or change agents, I recognized that empathy was a key ingredient to, and empathy comes sometimes through participation. And I had to get over some of the broad brushstrokes that people would put on the soldier because I knew it from an intricate, nuanced perspective. It is more important to have moral human beings in that uniform, on that front line, who understand Geneva Conventions, treaties and traditions, as well as their responsibility to the person on the other side of the barrel.
That's right.
And when they see a hate crime or a war crime, they must speak up. That is their duty, and that's why we have good people in there. I supported Bradley Manning, Chelsea Manning, and it was very controversial, even among my gay veteran friends, because I felt it was a declassification of truth. Not just the gay, but it helped people around the world to see that we can take charge of our government. And I felt those hate crimes, war crimes, I saw some of those in Iraq. And part of WikiLeaks' message was to encourage others to do the same. It was revolutionary, it was very dangerous, and I took a lot of hits to support that.
Well, again, sort of, when good people are silent, evil shall prevail. And I think there was a philosopher who said, they first came for somebody in my town and I was silent.
It's the Niemöller quote during World War II. The Jews or the gays or the communists or the trade unionists, and when they came for them, I didn't speak up because I'm not one of the other, right? But then they came for me. Finally, they came for me, and by that time, there was nobody left to speak up for me. And we recognize the intersectionality of our oppression, apartheid, or second-class citizenship, or segregation, whatever you want to call it. Certainly, through the narratives, there's a historic recording and emphasis for certain peoples, but the truly enlightened activist for civil rights and for equality will recognize that the source of that hate, and why we say injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, why we have to say things like the weakest link, or when one is chained, all are. Because that oppression comes from that same source. And if they take one person's right away, then they'll have power to take somebody else's until they're the only ones remaining.
And here in the United States, we build our belief on democracy, but we do not seem to be practicing exactly what we are preaching.
Most preachers don't.
Dan, I first want to say thank you for your service, and thank you for speaking out, for being controversial, for taking a stand. We need all people in society to be passionate about what they do, but to be respectful, to agree to disagree. We have spent today here at MasterCard talking about diversity, talking about ideas, talking about how we can make the world a better place. And Dan, I think your contributions really do help make our world a better place. And I love the uniqueness. I love the fact that you could take the seat side of a Toyota Prius, travel across the country to come and do a keynote, live a life of adventure, but to be mindful of other people and to be thinking about your fellow vets who are homeless, who are hungry, who are struggling, who are having a hard time integrating into society. We have to find a way to make these things right.
Well, we're on the journey together. Captain Peterson.
Lieutenant Dan. Thank you.
So this is how you do your